legitimate flood at that
exactly do you mean?
Meaning meddling in the election.
It was the call that set events in motion.
Okay, so we should have on the line here America's mayor, Mayor Giuliani, and we have Andrei Yermak.
Thrusting a reluctant Ukraine into America's divided politics. We already know through transcripts and testimony, Giuliani pressured them to announce investigations important to then President Trump. But this is the first time we've heard his actual voice.
I want very much to see that our two countries are able to work together.
How Giuliani cajoled the Ukrainian presidential advisor on the other end of the line, first promoting debunked conspiracy theories that Ukraine, not Russia, was involved in US election meddling in 2016 and tried to hurt the Trump campaign.
Way back in last November, I got information from a reliable investigator, international investigator, that there was a certain amount of activity in Ukraine during the 2016 election that involved Ukrainian officials and mostly officials, being asked by our embassy and possibly by other American officials. Basically, I mean, the statement was to produce dirt on then candidate Trump and Paul Manafort.
By the time of the call in July 2019, Joe Biden had already emerged as the Democratic Party's frontrunner to challenge President Trump. And digging up dirt on Biden, like the unfounded allegations of corrupt dealings in Ukraine when he was vice president, had become a priority for Trump and his long-time advisor. Throughout the roughly 40-minute call, Giuliani repeatedly pressed the Ukrainian leadership to publicly announce investigations into this too, something that would have undoubtedly benefited Trump's re-election campaign and damaged candidate Biden. Listen to how Giuliani sets out what's required.
And all we need from the president is to say, I'm going to put an honest prosecutor in charge. He's going to investigate and dig up the evidence that presently exists, and is there any other evidence about involvement of the 2016 election? And then the Biden thing has to be run out. I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, I see him bragging about it on television. And to me as a lawyer, it sounds like a bribe. Somebody in Ukraine's got to take that seriously.
In the Ukrainian presidential office, they took it very seriously. Then, as now, the country was fighting a desperate war against Russian-backed rebels in its east and heavily depended on US weapons and military aid to hold its ground, including millions of dollars that had been frozen by the Trump administration while Giuliani pursued these political investigations. Mindful of the need for a strong relationship with Washington, the Ukrainian presidential advisor on the call tried to assure Giuliani the investigations he wanted would be looked at.
And we're ready this day immediately communicated to coordinate, to work and investigate everything which you listed.
But privately, Ukrainian officials say they were alarmed at being sucked into American politics, especially when Giuliani repeatedly suggested compliance would open the door to closer US-Ukrainian ties, even a presidential meeting, undermining the former US president's assertions that he never sought political favors from Ukraine to secure US support, so-called quid pro quo.
I want nothing. I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo.
Now we can hear Giuliani set out his offer.
So if he could make some statement at the right time that he supports a fair, honest law enforcement system and that these investigations go wherever they have to go, it's going to be run by honest people, that would clear the air really well. And I think it would make it possible for me to come and make it possible, I think, for me to talk to the president and see what I can do about making sure that whatever misunderstandings are put aside And maybe even, I kind of think that this could be a good thing for having a much better relationship where we really understand each other.
To my factual knowledge, they approached numerous...
One former Ukrainian official who was listening in on the call understood all too well. He spoke to CNN last month of his outrage as he heard Giuliani try to force a deal that, in his words, threatened Ukraine's national security.
Let me remind you, we're a country fighting an active war with Russia for many years. So anything to do with swapping, favors within our bilateral relationship in exchange for trying to get us involved into U.S. domestic politics is just wrong on many levels, like morally, ethically, and probably even legally.
By call's end, the Ukrainian side seemed to understand exactly what President Zelensky of Ukraine was expected to do to keep Washington on side. And on the call, at least, they agreed.
I'm sure that Zelensky will say that, yeah.
Yeah, good. Second, boy, that would, believe me, Andrei, that would be good for all of us.
Giuliani has denied any wrongdoing in Ukraine and says he was just trying to help his personal client, Trump. It was, of course, this and other aggressive attempts to coax Ukraine, vigorously denied by then administration officials, that led to former President Trump's first impeachment, in which he was eventually acquitted by the US Senate. It's hard to know if actually hearing Giuliani relentlessly pressing Ukraine like this.
If he could say something like that, on his own in the conversation, it would go a long way. It would go a long way with the president to solve the problems.
Would have in any way influenced the outcome of the impeachment vote.
All right. Well, Jake, the Ukrainians, of course, never did announce any investigation into 2016 election meddling or, of course, into Joe Biden. And they paid a price for it because even though the White House unfroze the military aid to Ukraine, President Zelensky of Ukraine, he never got that invitation to the White House that he was looking for, something he valued because it was a show symbolically of support from the United States to Ukraine. Tonight, though, Jake, that's all changed because the Ukrainian president has, within the past few hours, announced that he has now finally been invited to the White House for the first time by President Biden in July.